The sky above Houston glowed with unusual lights. It was not a sunset or the northern lights, but something entirely different. Captain John Miller stood on the roof of the Earth Defense Force headquarters, his eyes fixed on the strange patterns forming in the atmosphere. His radio buzzed with urgent messages. "All stations report the same thing, sir," said Lieutenant Peter Collins, his voice tight with tension. "The alien fleet has entered our solar system. They've passed Mars' orbit and are heading toward Earth." John nodded, his face serious but calm. 10 days ago, NASA's deep space radar had detected the massive fleet approaching. Humanity had prepared as best they could in such short time, but everyone knew their weapons might not be enough against visitors who could cross the stars. "Is Admiral Wright at the command center?" John asked. "Yes, sir. She's waiting for you." The command center buzzed with activity. Screens showed the approaching ships, sleek, curved vessels that seemed to bend light around them. They were beautiful and terrifying. Admiral Susan Wright stood at the main console, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform perfectly pressed despite being on duty for 20 hours straight. When she saw John, she waved him over. "Miller, you're heading our welcome party," she said without preamble. "The aliens have requested a meeting on their command ship. They say they come in peace, but I want our best officer there to judge their intentions." John's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. "Yes, Admiral. When do I leave?" "1 hour. Take a small team. The shuttle is being prepped." Exactly 57 minutes later, John sat in the pilot's seat of the EDF's newest shuttle. With him were 4 officers, a linguistics expert, a biologist, a physicist, and Olivia Garcia, their top intelligence officer. Approaching the alien vessel, John announced as they neared the massive ship. It stretched nearly 2 miles from end to end, dwarfing their shuttle like a whale the size of minnow. A beam of blue light surrounded their shuttle, guiding it into a large opening. The shuttle landed softly in what appeared to be a docking bay larger than a football field. "Remember," John told his team as they prepared to exit, "we'd represent all of humanity. Stay alert but diplomatic." The air inside the alien ship was breathable, though it carried a slight scent of cinnamon. They were met by tall, slender beings with bluish skin and large, multifaceted eyes. The aliens wore flowing robes that seemed to shift colors with their movements. One stepped forward. "I am Zax Toril of the Galactic Concordat. We welcome Earth's representatives." The words came through a small device on the alien's chest, translated into perfect English. John introduced himself and his team. They were led through curved corridors to a large chamber where a semicircle of aliens waited, seated on elevated platforms. "The High Council of the Concordat is pleased to welcome humanity to the galactic community," said an older-looking alien in the center. "For many cycles, we have observed your world from afar. Your species has shown remarkable resilience and creativity." John nodded respectfully. "We're honored to make first contact and hope for peaceful relations between our peoples." The central alien made a gesture that might have been a smile. "Peace is precisely what we offer. The galaxy is full of dangers your young species cannot imagine. The Concordat offers protection to developing worlds like Earth." "Protection?" John asked. "Yes. Under our guidance, Earth will become a protected world. Your people will benefit from our knowledge while we ensure your safety." Something in the alien's tone made John uneasy. And what would Earth provide in return? Merely acceptance of Concordat authority and reasonable access to your planet's resources, a small price for our protection. The meeting continued for hours as details were explained. By the time John's team returned to Earth, his unease had grown to serious concern. Admiral Wright listened to his report in silence. When he finished, she stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. "They want our surrender," she said, "not our friendship." "Yes, Admiral. They expect us to be grateful for the opportunity to become their subjects." The next day, Admiral Wright addressed the Concordat representatives in a global broadcast. Her words were simple but firm. Humanity appreciates the Concordat's offer, but we must decline. Earth will not surrender its sovereignty. We propose instead a treaty between equals, with mutual respect for each other's independence. The alien delegation's reaction was immediate. Zax Toral's multifaceted eyes widened, and the translator struggled to keep up with the rapid sounds emerging from the alien. This response is unprecedented. No species has ever rejected Concordat protection. The consequences could be severe. Susan Wright stood tall. Nevertheless, that is humanity's answer. As the aliens departed, people across Earth watched the skies with worry. Humanity had made its choice. Nobody knew what would happen next. The Concordat ships remained in Earth's orbit like giant dark clouds promising a storm. Lieutenant Olivia Garcia sat alone in her small office aboard the EDF flagship Defiance, surrounded by screens showing intercepted alien transmissions. For 3 days straight, she had barely slept, working to decode the Concordat's internal communications. Her eyes burned from staring at the screens, but she couldn't stop now. Something about the aliens' protection offer felt wrong. The translation program she had developed was finally breaking through their encryption. There, she whispered as new text appeared on her main screen. What she read made her blood run cold. Olivia gathered her tablet and rushed through the corridors of the ship. Crew members stepped aside as she passed, sensing her urgency. She reached General William Foster's office and knocked sharply. "Enter," came the gruff reply. General Foster looked up from his desk, his face showing the strain of recent days. At 62, he had served in the EDF for over 30 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for alien contact. "Lieutenant Garcia, you found something." Olivia placed her tablet on his desk. "Yes, sir. I've decoded part of their internal communications. The Concordat's offer isn't protection, it's subjugation." She pulled up images and text on the screen. "Look at these reports about other species. The Vextal, the Meridians, the Kroshar, all protected by the Concordat. They've been reduced to resource planets. The aliens strip mine their worlds and harvest their people for genetic material." Foster leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the evidence. "And if planets resist?" Olivia's face darkened. "They make examples of them. This planet, Nereos IV, refused their terms 20 years ago. The Concordat bombarded their major cities from orbit until they surrendered. After that, they took twice the resources as punishment." The general stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth looked peaceful and blue, with no hint of the danger hovering above. "How reliable is this information, Lieutenant?" "Very reliable, sir. These are their own records, not meant for outside eyes. They've done this hundreds of times before. They expect us to follow the same pattern. Initial resistance, then surrender after they show their power." Foster turned back to face her. "What would you recommend, Lieutenant?" Olivia took a deep breath. "Standard procedure would be to keep this classified, sir. But I think people need to know what we're really facing." Foster nodded slowly. "I agree. If we're going to fight, everyone needs to understand why." 4 hours later, the evidence was presented to the United Earth Council. By evening, it was released to the public worldwide. People across Earth watched in horror as they learned the truth about the Concordat. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square to watch the broadcast on massive screens. In Beijing, students filled university courtyards. In Lagos, people stopped in the streets to listen on their phones. Jack Summers, a farmer in Iowa, watched with his family from their living room. "They're not getting our planet," he said firmly, his arm around his frightened children. In London, physicist Dr. Natalie Cooper immediately called her colleagues. "We need to accelerate the SHIELD project. Right now." Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Wright received thousands of messages from Earth governments and military leaders. All said the same thing. Humanity would not surrender. She called a meeting with her top officers, Captain John Miller, Lieutenant Olivia Garcia, and 20 others gathered in the ship's conference room. The Concordat expects us to reconsider once they show their power, Admiral Wright said. Instead, we're going to show them ours. Olivia's discovery changes everything. We know their playbook now. John nodded. They've never faced a species that knew their true intentions from the start. Exactly, said the Admiral. We need to prepare for their first strike. They'll target something important, but not critical, their standard tactic to force compliance without destroying potential resources. Olivia brought up a map of the solar system. Based on their patterns with other species, they'll likely target our Mars colony. It's valuable enough to hurt us, but far enough from Earth to give us time to surrender before they escalate. Admiral Wright's expression hardened. Then we fortify Mars, and we prepare a surprise of our own. The Concordat believes they know how this will play out, because it always has before. She looked around the table at each officer in turn. Let's show them that humans don't follow the script. Engineer Diane Powell stood in the center of her lab at the Colorado Space Defense Facility, surrounded by parts of a captured Concordat scout ship. The small craft had been disabled during a brief skirmish near the moon 3 days ago. Now it was humanity's most valuable resource. The material is like nothing we've seen before, she explained to the team of scientists and military officers gathered around her. It absorbs energy rather than reflecting it. That's why their ships are so dark. She picked up a small piece of metal that seemed to swallow the light around it. But we've figured out how to replicate it, and more importantly, how to use it against them. General Foster nodded with approval. How soon can we begin production? We already have. Factories around the world are working around the clock. Diane pointed to a screen showing manufacturing centers in Detroit, Shanghai, and Johannesburg. Within a week, we'll have enough to shield our key installations on Mars. The meeting continued as they discussed deployment strategies. Meanwhile, 140 million miles away, Commander Alan Murphy floated in zero gravity inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Around him, engineers installed massive engines salvaged from decommissioned space freighters. How's the guidance system coming along? He asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Carl Weber. Carl tapped on a control panel. Online and functioning. This rock will go exactly where we tell it to. Alan smiled. The asteroid was just one of 50 similar installations scattered throughout the belt. Each was equipped with engines and packed with mining explosives. From the outside, they looked like ordinary asteroids. The Concordat would never see them coming. Let's run the simulation one more time, Alan said. I want to make sure our timing is perfect. On Earth, millions of people were on the move. Military vehicles filled highways as troops deployed to defensive positions. Civilian evacuations from coastal cities created long lines of cars heading inland. Government broadcasts urged calm while acknowledging the danger. In Chicago, Nurse Kelly Bennett helped load medical supplies onto trucks bound for underground shelters. My grandfather fought in wars on Earth, she told a young volunteer. I never thought I'd be preparing for one against aliens. The volunteer, a college student named Eric, nodded. At least we know what we're fighting for. In orbit around Earth, the EDF fleet maintained its position. Though outnumbered by the Concordat ships, they did not back down. Admiral Wright had placed the fleet in a defensive formation that protected Earth while conserving their limited resources. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain John Miller received a secure transmission from Mars Colony. Captain, this is Governor Luis Rodriguez. Our preparations are complete. All civilians are in the underground shelters, and the defense systems are online. Good work, Governor. Remember, when they come, make it look like you're putting up a fight, but losing ground. We need them to think their plan is working. The governor's expression was serious. We understand. Mars Colony is ready to play its part. John turned to Lieutenant Olivia Garcia, who was analyzing new data from their long-range scanners. What's happening with the Concordat fleet? They're moving, sir. Several ships have broken formation and are heading toward Mars, just as we predicted. John checked the time. 7 days had passed since humanity rejected the Concordat's offer. The aliens were right on schedule, following their standard playbook for subjugating resistant species. Alert Admiral Wright, and send the coded signal to Commander Murphy in the asteroid belt. Throughout the solar system, humans prepared for the coming battle. In laboratories, scientists worked to understand alien technology. In factories, workers built new weapons. In military bases, soldiers trained for combat unlike any humanity had faced before. The Concordat expected a swift victory followed by surrender. Their records showed this pattern repeated countless times across the galaxy. No species had ever sustained resistance against their superior technology. But they had never encountered humans before. A species that had spent its entire history fighting, adapting, and overcoming impossible odds. A species that would rather die free than live as slaves. As the Concordat ships approached Mars, Admiral Wright sent a message to all Earth forces. They expect us to follow the same script as all the others. Let's show them that humanity writes its own story. Red dust swirled across the Martian landscape as Concordat ships entered the atmosphere. Their dark hulls blocked out the distant sun, casting long shadows over the colony domes. Inside the main defense bunker, Major Frank Cooper watched the enemy's approach on the large monitor. They're following the exact pattern Lieutenant Garcia predicted, he said to his team. 3 ships to the north, 2 to the south. They want to surround us. Frank had been in charge of Mars colony's defenses for 6 years. He never imagined his first real battle would be against aliens. The soldiers around him looked nervous but determined. "Remember, we make this look good," Frank said. "Let them think they're winning until we spring the trap." The Concordat ships fired their first volley. The shots were precise, hitting the colony's outer defenses but avoiding critical infrastructure. They wanted to capture Mars intact. Frank gave the order. Return fire. Pattern Alpha. Mars colony's defense guns activated, firing at the alien ships. The shots were carefully aimed to look threatening while doing minimal damage. On their screens, they could see the Concordat ships easily evading most of their fire. High above the battle, in Earth's command center, Dr. Elizabeth Dawson monitored everything. Her team analyzed every piece of data coming from Mars, every shot the Concordat fired, every move their ships made, revealed something about their technology. "Look at this," she said, pointing to energy readings from the alien ships. "Their propulsion systems create a specific electromagnetic field. It spikes just before they change direction." Her colleague, Dr. Paul Graham, leaned closer. "If we could disrupt that field." "Exactly," Elizabeth said. She quickly sent a message to Admiral Wright. "We need to adjust our weapons to target frequency 147.8 MHz. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Commander Alan Murphy received the signal he had been waiting for. "Begin Operation Rolling Thunder," he ordered. Throughout the belt, hidden engines came to life. What had seemed like ordinary asteroids began to move with purpose. They accelerated slowly at first, then faster as they headed toward Mars. The Concordat fleet commander, Sub-Hierarch Vex Mola, watched with satisfaction as his ships pressed their attack on Mars colony. The humans were fighting back, but their weapons were primitive. Their shots barely scratched his ship's hulls. "The pattern is proceeding as expected," he reported to the Concordat High Council. "The humans show spirit, but they cannot match our technology. They will witness the fall of their Mars colony and then surrender, as all species do." Just as he finished speaking, his sensors officer called out in alarm. "Sub-Hierarch, multiple objects approaching at high speed from the asteroid belt." Vex Mola turned to look at the tactical display. 50 large asteroids were hurtling toward his fleet. Before he could give orders to evade, the first one struck one of his ships. The explosion was massive, crippling the vessel instantly. "Impossible," he shouted. "These are just rocks. How could they?" Another asteroid hit, and another. His fleet scattered, trying to avoid the barrage. But the asteroids seemed to be guided, changing course to follow his ships. From his bunker on Mars, Frank Cooper watched the chaos above with a grim smile. "Now, pattern beta," he ordered. Mars colony's defenses unleashed their real firepower. Weapons that had been hidden beneath the surface emerged and fired at the disoriented Concordat ships. These weren't the standard defense guns the aliens had seen before. These were new weapons built using the reverse-engineered technology from the captured scout ship. The energy beams hit the Concordat vessels at the exact frequency Elizabeth had identified. Their shields flickered and failed. In Earth Command, Admiral Wright watched the battle unfold. "Send the message to all ships," she ordered. "Execute Operation Phalanx." Earth's fleet moved into attack formation. Ships that had been hiding on the far side of the moon joined them. Together, they headed toward Mars. On his flagship, now badly damaged, Subhierarch, Vex Mola could not believe what he was seeing. The humans had trapped his fleet between the asteroid barrage and the colony's unexpected firepower. And now an Earth fleet was approaching. "This is not possible," he said to his bridge crew. "No species has ever." He paused as the tactical officer gave him the latest update. Half his fleet was disabled or destroyed. The remaining ships were in no condition to continue the fight. For the first time in the Concordat's long history of conquest, their initial strike had failed completely. Vex Mola gave the order he never thought he would have to give. "All ships, retreat. Return to the main fleet." News of the Mars victory spread across the solar system like wildfire. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. Videos of the Concordat ships retreating played on every screen. For the first time, humanity had faced the galaxy's great empire and won. But beyond Earth's solar system, the news traveled even faster. The Concordat had ruled hundreds of worlds for thousands of years. Never before had their first attack failed. The story passed from planet to planet, whispered between slaves, murmured by servants, discussed in secret by the subjugated species of the galaxy. Ambassador Patricia Henderson stood before the United Earth Council, her expression serious despite the recent victory. "We can't stop with defense," she said. "We need to reach out to other species under Concordat rule. If we stand alone, we will eventually fall." The council members nodded in agreement. They had already voted to send Ambassador Henderson on the most dangerous diplomatic mission in human history, to make contact with other enslaved civilizations. 3 weeks later, Patricia's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the edge of Concordat space. They had used the technology recovered from captured ships to make the journey. Her small vessel was designed to look like a Concordat supply ship, painted with the Empire's symbols and broadcasting their identification codes. "We're approaching the Vextal homeworld," reported the pilot, Sam Baker. "No sign that they've detected us as anything but a regular Concordat vessel." Patricia nodded. "Take us down near the trading post. Remember, everyone stays on high alert. If we're discovered, we won't get a second chance." The ship landed in a remote area near one of the alien world's smaller cities. Patricia had studied everything Earth knew about the Vextal. They were one of the first species conquered by the Concordat, over 500 years ago. Once proud warriors with advanced technology, they now lived as little more than slaves, mining resources for their masters. Under cover of darkness, Patricia and 2 team members made their way to a meeting point. Their contact was a Vextal resistance leader who had received their secret message sent weeks earlier through hidden channels. The meeting place was an abandoned temple, its stone walls crumbling after centuries of neglect. Inside, 3 tall, gray-skinned aliens waited. Their large, 4-fingered hands rested on concealed weapons. "I am Patricia Henderson of Earth," she said, using the translation device developed from Concordat technology. "We come seeking allies against our common enemy." The tallest Vextal stepped forward. "I am Kral, leader of what remains of the Free Vextal. We have heard impossible stories. They say humans defeated a Concordat attack fleet. Is this true?" Patricia nodded. "It is, and we've brought proof." She activated a small projector showing footage of the Battle of Mars. The Vextal watched in silence, their large, dark eyes widening. When the recording ended, they spoke among themselves in their clicking language. Finally, Crawl turned back to Patricia. In 5 centuries, no one has successfully fought the Concordat. My ancestors tried and were nearly wiped out. The Meridians tried. The Crowshar tried. All failed. We know, Patricia said, but things are different now. We've learned from your failures and built on them. We've discovered weaknesses in their technology. And most importantly, we're offering something the Concordat never expected. What is that? Asked Crawl. A true alliance, not conquest, not subjugation. We want partners, not slaves. Crawl studied her face, searching for deception. Why should we trust you? How are humans different from the Concordat? Patricia smiled. Because I'm standing here, risking my life to ask for your help, instead of demanding your obedience. And because we bring you this. She handed him a small device. Plans for the weapons we use to defeat the Concordat ships. Freed for you to use, to share with others, to defend yourselves. Crawl took the device, his fingers trembling slightly. This is the beginning, Patricia said. We've also made contact with the Meridians and the Crowshar. We're building a network across Concordat space. For the first time, all the subjugated species will fight together. Crawl looked at his companions, then back at Patricia. The Concordat Council believes they face only humans. They don't realize what's coming, do they? Patricia shook her head. No, they've spent thousands of years making enemies across the galaxy. We're just the first who found a way to fight back. Now we're giving that way to everyone else. Crawl placed his hand on his chest in a Vextal gesture of commitment. Then the Vextal will join your alliance, and the Concordat will learn what it means to face a galaxy that no longer fears them. The Concordat High Council chamber was silent as Subhierarch Vex Mola finished his report on the Mars defeat. The 12 council members sat in their elevated seats, their faces showing a mix of shock and anger. None of them had expected this outcome. Impossible, said High Counselor Zithtar, the oldest and most respected member. No primitive species has ever repelled our first strike. Your report must be flawed. I witnessed it myself, Vex Mola replied, his voice tight with embarrassment. The humans knew we were coming. They had prepared traps. They had weapons that could penetrate our shields. Another council member leaned forward. Could they have received help from outside? Perhaps another spacefaring power? No, said Vex Mola. The technology was their own, adapted from one of our scout ships they captured. They are resourceful in ways we have not seen before. While the Concordat leaders argued about what to do next, humanity was already making its next move. Chief Strategist Kevin Washington stood before a holographic map in Earth Command, explaining his plan to the gathered military leaders. Operation Wildfire, he said, pointing to 3 star systems near the edge of Concordat space. A 3-pronged attack aimed at liberating these worlds. The Vextal, Meridians, and Crowshar have all joined our alliance. They know the Concordat's defenses from the inside. Admiral Wright studied the plan. This is ambitious, Kevin. We've only fought 1 battle so far. That's why it will work, Kevin replied. The Concordat is still reeling from Mars. They don't expect us to strike back so quickly. And they certainly don't expect us to attack multiple targets at once. After much discussion, the plan was approved. Captain Laura Bennett was assigned to lead the stealth mission to free the Vextal homeworld, while Colonel Ryan Phillips would command the direct assault on a key Concordat shipyard. 2 months later, Laura's ship approached the massive orbital station above the Vextal planet. Her crew was a mix of humans and Vextal rebels, working together to free a world that had been enslaved for 5 centuries. We're within range, reported her pilot. The station still shows us as a Concordat supply vessel. Laura nodded. Begin docking procedures. Remember, once we're inside, we have 20 minutes to take control of the central systems before the real supply ship arrives. The human Vextal team moved swiftly through the station, using access codes provided by their Vextal allies. The few Concordat guards they encountered were quickly subdued. Most of the station's functions were automated, with only a skeleton crew. Control room secured, Laura reported through her comlink. Proceeding to Phase 2. Across the station, her team activated the hidden devices they had planted. The station's defense systems shut down, one by one. On the planet below, Vextal freedom fighters emerged from hiding and attacked the small Concordat outposts. Meanwhile, Colonel Ryan Phillips led a more direct approach at the Concordat shipyard. His fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on top of the facility, weapons already firing. "All ships target the dry docks first," he ordered. "Don't let any of their vessels launch." The Concordat defenders scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Human ships, using the tactics developed during the Mars battle, systematically disabled the shipyard's defenses. Meridian saboteurs who had been working as slave labor inside the facility activated, destroying key systems from within. Back on the Concordat capital world, the High Council received the alarming news of both attacks simultaneously. "How is this possible?" demanded Zithtar. "The humans should be cowering in their system, grateful that we haven't destroyed them yet." The military commander bowed low. "It's worse than that, High Counselor. The attacks aren't just human forces. They've allied with the Vextal and Meridians. There are reports of Kroshar ships as well. The slave species are rebelling. Together." Zithtar's voice rose in disbelief. "Yes, and they're using human tactics and technology. The shipyard is lost. The Vextal orbital station has fallen. We've received distress calls from 3 other systems." For the first time in living memory, fear spread through the Concordat High Council. They had ruled through isolation, keeping subjugated species separate, preventing them from communicating or cooperating. Now humans had broken that isolation, and centuries of hatred were being unleashed. "Send all available ships," ordered Zithtar. "Crush this rebellion immediately, before it spreads further." But it was already too late. Operation Wildfire was living up to its name. The flames of rebellion were spreading across the galaxy faster than the Concordat could contain them. 6 months had passed since Operation Wildfire began. What started as a spark had become a raging fire. Dozens of worlds had risen up against the Concordat. Ships from 7 different species now flew together in the Alliance fleet. Admiral Joseph Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Intrepid, looking at the tactical display. Around him, officers from Earth, Vextal, Meridian, and Kroshar worked side by side. "The Concordat forces are gathering at Centaurus Nexus," Joseph said. "They're bringing ships from across their territory to form one massive fleet." His second-in-command, a tall Meridian named Calvor, nodded. "They hope to crush us with one decisive blow. It's their traditional response to any significant threat." Joseph smiled grimly. "Then we'll meet them there. All ships prepare for jump to Centaurus Nexus." Meanwhile, on Earth, scientist Heather Kelly worked through another long night in her lab. For months, she had been studying captured Concordat technology, trying to understand how such an unimaginative empire had maintained technological superiority for thousands of years. "There's something wrong with this picture," she told her assistant. "Look at their ship designs over the past millennium. The basic principles never change. There's no innovation, just small improvements to the same systems." Her assistant yawned. "Maybe they found something that works and stuck with it." "No advanced civilization works that way," Heather replied. "Technology always evolves, changes direction, finds new approaches. Unless..." She pulled up records from the various liberated worlds. Technology that had been in development before the Concordat conquered them. Innovations that had mysteriously disappeared. "That's it," she whispered. "They're not inventors. They're thieves." When the Alliance fleet arrived at Centaurus Nexus, they found the largest Concordat fleet ever assembled. Nearly 1,000 ships formed a defensive sphere around the space station that controlled travel and commerce for that entire sector of the galaxy. "They outnumber us 3 to 1, said Calvor. Joseph nodded. "But we have something they don't." He opened a channel to all Alliance ships. "This is Admiral Martinez. The Concordat thinks they know how this battle will play out because they've fought it 100 times before. But they've never faced a united galaxy. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every world that has suffered under their rule. Execute Battle Plan Phoenix." The Alliance ships split into smaller groups and attacked from multiple directions. The Concordat fleet responded with its standard defense formation. But the Alliance ships didn't behave as expected. Crow starfighters darted between the larger ships with a speed the Concordat had never encountered. Vextal cruisers used old hunting tactics their ancestors had developed centuries ago, trapping Concordat ships between crossfires. And weaving through it all were the human vessels, coordinating the attack, exploiting every weakness the Alliance had discovered in Concordat technology. At the height of the battle, every communication channel in the sector suddenly activated. Heather Kelly's face appeared on screens across both fleets. "People of the galaxy," she said, "the Concordat has lied to you. They are not the advanced civilization they claim to be. For thousands of years, they have stolen innovations from the species they conquer. They contribute nothing of their own." The broadcast continued, showing evidence from dozens of worlds. Technology developed by the Vextal that later appeared on Concordat ships. Meridian medical advances claimed as Concordat discoveries. The pattern repeated across centuries and civilizations. They keep us divided and ignorant because together we are greater than they could ever be, Heather concluded. They fear our creativity, our innovation, our cooperation, and they are right to fear it. The effect on the battle was immediate. Across the Concordat fleet, ships from recently conquered worlds began to hesitate, then break formation. Some turned their weapons on other Concordat vessels. The carefully structured hierarchy that had maintained control for millennia began to crumble. By the time the battle ended, the Alliance controlled Centaurus Nexus. The greatest Concordat fleet ever assembled had been defeated. And throughout Concordat space, more worlds were rising in rebellion, inspired by the truth and the Alliance's victory. In the remains of the Concordat command station, Joseph found a message being prepared for transmission to the Concordat homeworld. It contained a single line: "The humans have changed everything. Request immediate peace negotiations." 5 years had passed since humanity first encountered the Concordat. 5 years of fighting, liberating, and building alliances. Now, on the Concordat capital world of Nexus Prime, a new chapter was about to begin. Grand Admiral Michelle Daniels walked up the steps of the Concordat High Council chamber. Her uniform was crisp and simple, bearing the combined insignia of Earth and the Alliance. Behind her walked representatives from 27 species that had once been Concordat subjects. The chamber doors opened. Inside, the remaining Concordat leaders waited. Their once magnificent robes now looked faded. Their faces showed the strain of watching their empire crumble around them. High Counselor Zithtar spoke first. "The human representative is recognized by the Concordat Council. You may present your terms." Michelle looked around the room slowly, meeting each alien gaze. "I am not here to present terms," she said. "I am here to inform you of the new reality." She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of worlds highlighted in green. "These are the worlds that have joined the Alliance. More join each day. The Concordat, as you knew it, no longer exists." Zithtar's face darkened. "We still control many worlds. We can continue this war for decades." Michelle shook her head. "Your remaining ships are facing mutinies. Your subject worlds are in open rebellion. And most importantly, the lie that kept your empire together has been exposed. Everyone now knows that the Concordat's power was built on stolen innovation and forced ignorance." She walked around the display, pointing to various star systems. "You have a choice. Continue fighting a war you cannot win, or join us in building something new." One of the younger council members leaned forward. "Join you? As what? Slaves?" "No, Michelle replied. As equals, something the Concordat never offered anyone. From the Alliance delegation, Professor Daniel Martinez stepped forward. He was Earth's leading expert on alien cultures and had spent years studying the Concordat. For thousands of years, he said, the Concordat built power through division and fear. You kept species isolated, preventing them from sharing knowledge. You took their innovations and claimed them as your own. You made each world believe it stood alone against your might. He gestured to the diverse group behind him. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't superior weapons or tactics. It was cooperation. The simple idea that different species could work together as equals. Michelle nodded and continued. We call our proposal the Solar Accords, a new galactic constitution built on 3 principles: autonomy for all worlds, shared defense against outside threats, and open exchange of knowledge and culture. She handed a data crystal to Zithtar. These are not demands. This is an invitation. The Concordat can join as equals, contributing your knowledge and experience to help build a better galaxy. The council members looked at each other in confusion. They had expected harsh punishment, execution, or at best exile. The offer of partnership left them speechless. Why would you offer this? Zithtar finally asked. After all we did to your people and others. Because true peace can't be built on revenge, Michelle replied. Humans understand this because our own history is full of wars and reconciliations. We know that lasting peace only works when it benefits everyone. 2 weeks later, ships from across the galaxy gathered in Earth orbit. Inside a specially built space station, representatives from over 100 worlds prepared to sign the Solar Accords. Among them were former Concordat officials, now representing their homeworlds as independent entities. Admiral Wright, now retired but invited as a guest of honor, stood with Captain John Miller watching the proceedings. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you first met them? She asked. John shook his head. Never. I thought we were fighting for survival. I never dreamed we'd end up remaking the galaxy. Susan smiled. That's the difference between us and them. The Concordat could only imagine conquest or submission. They didn't understand that real strength comes from working together. As the signing ceremony began, news broadcasts carried the event to every world in the Alliance. The message was simple. The era of conquest was over. A new age of cooperation had begun, and it had all started because humanity had rejected peace built on submission and insisted on peace built on equality.